Greetings. This is Katsalaurk Seifu, your host of the new Pan-African show called AfreeQa. Today we have a guest for you from Africology called Kalabe Birhane. Welcome to Africa.
Thank you very much.
Well, we're going to be covering a lot of, when I say a lot, I mean from TV to streetwear to music to
culture, lifestyle.
So we're going to be going around. Stay with us. Okay, so Kalabe.
Yes.
I read that you lived in 3 different African countries, starting from Ethiopia. You went to Tanzania, and then you went to Ghana.
The opposite.
The opposite.
So it was Ethiopia, Ghana, and then Tanzania.
Okay, so I want you to describe how that experience was.
Sure.
And also maybe why did you actually go from Ethiopia to Ghana, and then how did you get to travel?
So I was born here in Howlett, not too far from here. So from when I was born to the age of 7, I was in Ethiopia, and then I was fortunate enough to have my parents work for the United Nations. Mom worked for UNICEF for 30 years. She's retired now. My dad did ECA, UNDP, name it, you know.
So
they're seasoned vets and given to people. So yeah, me and my siblings were fortunate enough to have moved to Ghana. I was at the age of 7. I'm the youngest of 5. And I clearly remember moving from Ethiopia and being terrified because I had just started learning Amharic, didn't know too much English, and I got picked up from here and went straight from kindergarten to 1st grade in Ghana.
And you had to know English.
And I was clueless for a little while, but I had really great teachers whom I'm good friends with their kids, and you know, we still keep in touch and what have you. So when I moved to Ghana at the age of 7, that's like the age that you really soak in a lot of good things, you know? So I got acclimated to Ghana. I even had a Ghanaian accent, used to speak hidden English
lovely.
and what have you. Yeah, I was there from 1st grade to 10th grade, and that would be, 10 years. That was 88 to 98. So my formative years were in Accra, Ghana. Used to live in an area called Labwani.
How was that experience?
It was an amazing experience. It was an international school that we went to. So at an early age, you know, I had friends that were from Germany. I had friends that were from China, friends that were from Ghana, Lebanon, name it. We were just kids, you know, getting used to each other's cultures. We used to go to people's houses. One of my really good friends that used to live right down the street, Ramsey, I had one of our aunts was living with us and taking care of us as well. And she used to make shiro and injera and what have you on Sundays. And they would die for it.
So Ramsey was a regular.
Ramsey was a regular with shiro, and he used to crack me up. And he loves the word net alachama because, you know, when we used to misbehave, my aunt used to be real good at throwing it and slinging it away. So anytime he messages, he's like, "Hey, net alachama, how are you doing?"
Wow.
You know,
it's your nickname.
it was, yeah, well, you know, it was a cohesive culture clash in a good way. You know, people consider it clash in a bad way, but the Jamaicans, you know, that's how people would get together to make music, you know? That's how I saw it. So Ghana was beautiful. School was hard. It wasn't easy. It was the British system, IGCS. I think at one point it was the IGCS, and they changed it to IGCSE and what have you. But I was lucky enough at when I got to 10th grade, which is Form 2, we got word that we were moving to Tanzania, and it was an American school. Me and my brother were really
Quite
happy
happy.
about that, you know, because if we had stayed, we would have had to do lower 6 and upper 6 and the whole British system, and it was just like, and it was, to be honest with you, this is an African show, right? So can I speak?
Please do.
All right. This is the problem I had with that school. Most of the stuff that we learned was about Napoleon and the British Empire and what have you. And I remember sitting in class, in history class, just getting kind of confused, like figuring out where's the African history? Like, where's Ethiopian history or Ghanaian history? It was hidden from us, to be honest with you. Not really hidden. That was the curriculum. That's what they abided by. We went through it. We learned a lot. I'm not taking anything back from it, but I wish we, as Africans, had learned a lot more
about Africa.
You know, that was the upbringing in Ghana.
And then moved to Tanzania.
Yeah, so Tanzania. So like I said, I'm the last one out of 5 siblings. So around 96, I think my oldest sister moved to college, and then my second sister was, I think, in 97, somewhere around there. You know, age is nothing but a number right now, you know, so I forget.
Especially at this age.
Especially, yeah. So yes, they both moved, and then the third one, which is my brother, he moved in 98, and then it was just my immediate older brother, myself, and my mom. And then, by the way, just to make a quick reference about the way my parents sacrificed themselves for us, when we moved to Ghana, we lived with my dad, and my mom was working in Kenya at that time because she was positioned there. So it was a lot of, you know what I mean?
Back and forth.
Back and forth. But then when my dad ended up moving to Cambodia and then moved back to Ethiopia, she moved to Ghana. You know what I mean? So they kind of gave us a consistent education.
That's
throughout.
probably why she came back. So you
Absolutely,
stayed.
yeah. I
is-
even think at one point she even had that she had to lower her pay grade and what have you to make that switch. So we're very lucky. You know what I mean?
I hope she knows that.
Then Ghana is beautiful. Like I said, beautiful culture, arts, very vibrant, beautiful people. And
Do you think that's where
the vibe came
the
from?
vibe to
Yeah,
Africology,
absolutely.
the vibe
Yeah,
to
yeah.
what you are doing now?
Ghana plays a huge role. And you know why? When we were kids, what Davido and Burna Boy are singing in Ghana will say pidgin or broken English. You know what I mean? Our teachers used to crucify us. They used
If
to
you
say that was,
spoke.
oh yeah,
Of
pidgin.
course.
They would say that's the language of vagabonds, as they would put it. And I remember getting annoyed by that, right? But then years later, you have Burna Boy winning Grammys speaking pidgin, which I understand everything he's saying. It resonates, you know. But yeah, going back, so from Ghana, 98, we moved to Tanzania, which was another shock. Knew nothing about Tanzania at that time. Go ahead.
Sorry, I apologize for cutting, but I wanted you to tell us the difference between Ghana, because when you think of Africa, even though I always think we're all the same. There are maybe certain things that might be different, but in the way we live, it's pretty much the same. Or is it not?
It's different.
Okay.
It's different.
It is.
West Africa and East Africa is completely different. Let's talk about just simple things like the coast of West Africa doesn't have blue waters and white sands like Tanzania and Kenya does, right? That's just one simple difference. Food, it's different. Maybe with fufu and ugali might have similarities, but say if you were to make kebabs in Ghana and Nigeria, it's suya powder they use, which is peanuts and peppers all mixed together, and it's a very different palate, taste-wise. You go to Tanzania, it's more, they call it mishkaki, which is more, the meat is marinated in a different way, and you're not going to get that suya taste. You know what I mean? So these are just simple, what you call it. But then Tanzania is beautiful. It stole my heart. 98, I'm not going to lie. You know what I mean?
Good.
10th grade. Actually, no, 11th and 12th grade.
So you were about what, 15, 16?
Somewhere around.
Yeah, okay.
You trying to figure out my age?
No, I'm just trying to see from what,
Yeah, no, so
because
it's,
depending on how old you are, when you go to a new culture, sometimes you're acceptant, sometimes you're excited, sometimes you're completely closed off.
so let's just say Tanzania is where I learned a lot of bad habits. You know?
Acceptable.
Bad and good habits, you know?
Yeah.
That's where we learned a lot.
Okay.
Got into trouble a little bit more in Tanzania than I did in Ghana because, in Ghana, we're playing basketball all day, and then we're hanging out on the street that we grew up in and we're riding bicycles and what have you. Tanzania, learned how to drive. My mom taught me how to drive. She was out the house a little bit more frequently.
Okay.
So me and my brother had the freedom to grow up by ourselves in some ways. We also had an aunt living with us, but, she just made sure we were fed and, you know what I mean? Everything else was on us.
Before we go back to Africology, because I heard rumors,
Okay.
and the rumors told me, because the way you explained the difference between the foods told me that you are more than just a food connoisseur. I heard you were a chef also.
I don't like that word chef.
Okay, then
I know where you heard it from. I know where that rumor came from. came from Teddy.
Exactly.
Because Teddy consumed some kebabs
Yes.
and some plantains and some yams and, you know, some tips and shiro, a mix.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
So-
also within you.
Yeah,
You like
you know, we've got
food.
the vibe.
You got the
Yeah.
food vibe. Beautiful. So let's go back to Africology. Why did you think there was a need to start Africology?
After I left Tanzania, 12th grade, I was fortunate enough to have been accepted at the same school that all my siblings went to. As a matter of fact, it was a shortcut. When I got accepted there, I didn't even apply to other schools. And they even gave me some kind of like $3,000 discount, like scholarship or some situation. So I grabbed it and went there. But when I went there was a thing called culture shock, you know, because if you remember earlier, I told you when our upbringing was with kids from all parts of the world all together. America's a little segregated, to be honest with you, and that's the reality of it, you know? So I would witness things, stereotype. I had dreads. Do you have X, Y, and Z? You know, all those things were like thrown, association or what have you. But in Amarinya, they say, to prove them wrong, you know? So as I was growing up, I realized the African culture wasn't celebrated. You know, our school was in Norfolk, Virginia. There was a little bit of Ethiopians here and there, a few Ghanaians, but, you know, everything is in cliques. So there's no representation. And growing up with both parents being in the United Nations, I aspired to go into the UN. But then when I realized what it stood for, took a step back, and then they wanted a master's degree, which I was not interested in doing either, you know? So Africology is our version of the UN without the politics. So music, lifestyle, and culture, no religion, no politics. And that's how we've been doing it for the past 11 years, you know? So.
And it's obviously working.
It's working. It's a hard battle to travel, by the way. This is the life of a self-employed person, you know? A lot of sacrifice, a lot of letdowns, a lot of ups and downs and what have you, but we're still here. You know what I mean? So we have a purpose.
So the need to start Africology was?
Okay, so after I moved from Virginia, I remember I moved to my parents' place in New Jersey, and that was the invitation from my mom because I did marketing and management in Old Dominion University. And let's just say one of the interviews didn't go too well. There was a racism situation going on. I had gotten interviewed. Back then, there's no internet and any of that stuff. It's phone interview. Did really extremely well. And I remember I had a nice suit and the whole nine. And went into the office, and I never forget that man's face when I walked in. And I say, "Hi, I'm Kalabe Birhane." He's like, "Oh, you're Kalabe Birhane?" And then I had the shock in his face.
He did not
He didn't figure. Yeah, the paper and the thing didn't match.
Did not match.
And automatically, I was just cordial, you know, to let go through the whole process. But after that, it just really turned completely. And then I vowed that I would not go into corporate world after that. But I did an internship for 3 years with Marsh & McLennan, which is a risk and insurance management firm. Had to tie my hair back all the time. This was an internship during college, so I knew it wasn't for me. So when my mom said, "Hey, you know what?" She was working in New York City at that time, lived in Brooklyn, Manhattan, Brooklyn, and then moved to Jersey. And unfortunately, at that time, in 2001, my dad had a stroke as well. So it was a good opportunity for me to be there while she was working to kind of take care of things and spend time with them as well. So when I moved into Jersey, I got an internship with VP Records of all labels. You know what I mean? So that's why. And when I moved there, it was all Caribbean related. And I remember I used to talk to Randy especially more than Chris. But I used to always represent Africa. I said, this is the future. Do something. Let's do something, or what have you. But they mostly concentrate on Caribbean, the island, mostly soca music, reggae, calypso, and what have you. Didn't work out. So when I left there, that's when I became self-employed pretty much. And I was doing consulting work for clothing lines. That's when I started managing Meta and the Cornerstones. Sirac, my partner, that co-founded Africology, introduced me to to Meta and the rest of them. But at that time, I remember I was terrified with New York City, by the way, when I first got there.
You know, I'm glad you brought it up because
Yeah.
I was going to ask. It has to be a culture shock for an African to actually move to America, especially how you were,
Yeah, big
how
time.
you lived, surrounded by
Yeah.
all this diversity, and then all of a sudden you go to the U.S.
It's not there.
It's definitely not
Well,
there.
Virginia is not, it's there, but it's not there. New York, it's there.
That's what I was coming to. So
Yeah.
from there, when you go to New York, there even in the States, there's a lot of different states that are shocking.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So as an African going there, how were you perceived? How did you perceive it? And how did it make you feel? The racism, that is. You know what? You know what? Okay.
I always turn a blind eye to that.
Okay, good.
You know, intentions. What's inside you shows in your face.
All right.
When you get pulled over and you have nothing to hide. I mean, I've been in bad situations, don't get me wrong. I've been in bad situations, but majority of the time it's Memphis, spirit, the prayers from grandmothers and
Right.
parents
Takes
and what
care
have
of
you.
it.
That takes, literally, you know, certain things. Sometimes I would be in situations and it just comes to you and somehow, some way you just kind of
Get out of it.
you know. But I think the most important thing about New York and how I started Africology with Sirac was Sirac at that time was doing a thing called The Mic Goes Global, and Andrew and somebody by the name brilliance, who I grew up with in Tanzania, grew up with her in Ghana. We're family, like we're not blood related, but we're family.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, there's this really cool guy, Sirac. I got to introduce you to him and what have you. And she was in New York at that time. She's like, let's go to the LES. I'm like, what is LES? Like, what are all these abbreviations? Like, Lower East Side. And I was like, I got a whole lot to learn. I just came from, slow Norfolk, Virginia. So I went to the first show I ever went to with them was K9.
Wow.
Yeah. Mercury Lounge or somewhere in that area. That's when things started kind of brewing up with the sentiment of Africa for me. But then when I started going to different places, the Ghanaians would have party in the Bronx and they would be the best. But there wouldn't be, we weren't together,
No, it's not like when it was in Ghana.
No.
Everybody's segregated.
Yeah, everybody has their own thing.
group.
And no pun intended, they're doing their thing and it's all good. But we wanted something together. So spoke to Sirac and he had the same similar feeling and sentiment. And we brainstormed for a couple of times. We spoke about working together. And we didn't work together until I started managing Meta. When I started managing Meta, I got familiar with clubs and venues and all the different intricate details with New York, driving skills, name it, And then I think it was when K9. It's weird with K9, right? The second time his album release party, again on Rivington Street, I forget what club it was. I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, the name Africology came to me.
Wow.
And it was off of his song. The artist Keziah Jones was saying Bafukology in a song, because you should check out that song. It's pretty dope. That was the inspiration. And then I tapped Sirac. I was like, yo, it should be called Africology. He's like, looked at me. He's like, where do you even get that from? I say, bro, sometimes you just gotta open your ear. He's like, okay, that's what we're gonna do. That was around 2019 or so. And then at that time as well, I was working with Momar Clemens, who's the co-founder of Liberation Lab, a clothing line. He's a graphic artist. I learned a lot of the stuff from him, really. Okay. He basically and he was at Rhythm Driven as well. So I kind of followed him, and learned the fashion industry, streetwear, and what have you. We ended up getting a studio together in 2019. And I remember the address, 10J Street in Dumbo, down under the Manhattan Bridge is what they call it, where most of the creatives lived. Busta Rhymes used to live not too far away. We used to see him in his fancy car once in a while and what have you. Wow. So it was a very inspirational spot. So we anchored down there. We created the first logo, created a bunch of different things and what have you. But we were young. We didn't even know what we were doing. This thing started as a passion.
You were just so open.
Open with it. We just ran with it. So events, TV, radio, like if you look at all our brainstorming sessions, you know, you'll see just things scattered around, you know. But then that started developing into a business. We registered it as an LLC, you know, registered the domain name and what have you, and the rest is, you know,
history, as they say.
Like the Senegalese guy would do with his hands.
Exactly. And now that you said Senegal, we're going to go to Senegal.
I'm cool with that.
We're going to do Meta and the Cornerstone. Now, Meta and the Cornerstone, I don't remember what year it was, but they came here.
They did.
So were you guys involved in that event?
So Sirac is the one that put that whole thing together.
Oh.
At that time, I had stopped managing them.
Okay.
But then we're all friends, we're all family, and it was Tizita Festival?
Tizita Festival,
that's right.
Exactly.
They got invited to do that. I unfortunately was stuck in America. I didn't even come, but Sirac brought them here.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful thing because he was the one that introduced me to them. And Meta loved it here.
Yeah, because I actually got an opportunity to interview him back then too. So, how successful were you in bridging the gap between continents and cultures? And how did you try to do that?
Okay, so can I ask you a question on this
Sure.
question? Do you measure success by the amount of wealth or the amount of impact? If this is wealth.
For me, it's impact.
Good, because I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Because the money and the impact does not.
Not
especially as an African representing Africa at that time in America.
There was nothing.
No.
I didn't even.
You know, but as far as impact, it was impactful. I mean, think of it this way: we started doing events, Africology events. One of the first ones we did was AfreeQa sessions. We did one in Manhattan, and we did one in Brooklyn. Rest his soul, Karibi. He unfortunately passed away like a month ago or so from cancer. He was a Nigerian brother managing a place called DT.
Wow.
So he knew what we were up to,
Okay.
you know. So, and he was very supportive. You know, Momar was there as well. Rashid was there as well. And if I mention Rashid, we used to do a party called Passport Sundays or what have you. I have all the flyers, you know. Rashid is married to an Ethiopian, and he's also a legendary music producer who's produced for Biggie Smalls and Method Man and what have you. But he understood the culture. He supported us as well, you know. So we started doing those parties, and guess what? Became a cultural melting pot. Wow. Because we would invite people from all over. It's not just Africans. I mean, people would just wander and then would email us. And say, wow, I had an amazing time. I've never experienced that. Nice. So we continued that. And, you know, we did the events there. And then fortunately enough, Sirac also DJ'd at Summer Stage a couple of times, opened up for Alpha Blondie, I think Teddy Afro as well. So we started, you know, placing our faces in these familiar places. And some people, I wouldn't mention names, but this is the honest to God truth, were intimidated by us. Because we're truly African.
Absolutely.
Right? We're not faking it. No. So that was intimidating for a lot of people, but you know, that's besides the point. We've matured enough to put it to the side and, you know,
that's one of, I mean, no, but we won't, I'm sorry, we're not going to put it to the side because I think it's something that we need to address. Because you as an African, well, you could be a non-African for that matter. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people that are non-Africans that promote Africa.
True.
And are fine with it.
Yes.
Meaning even the people that are looking at them are fine with it. But when it comes to an African brother or a sister promoting or trying to promote Africa or the country they live in, it's always an issue. Why do you think that is so? Why is it that we are, instead of, you know, helping each other, we're trying to put each other down?
We don't have the right funding.
Who needs funding? We support each other without the funding?
No, we did. And that's why we're still alive.
True.
Right? That's why we're still alive. But competitors had $1 million to start their company. We had parents' credit cards that we run and, you know, went in debt and what have you. That's the difference, you know? And even if you approach them, maybe we were too African at that time. You know what I mean?
So are we two Africans for the African Americans?
No, I don't believe that.
Okay. So we're cool with them. We have good relationships.
Absolutely. Like there's other people might have their own opinions or what have you, but for me, I lived in Harlem,
Yeah.
Brooklyn. Momar is African American. You know what I mean? We never really had issues. I know there's major issues that, you know, this whole, I stay away from all that drama, to be honest with you. But as far as I'm concerned, African Americans are super supportive. When I used to I don't know if you know, but I used to general manage the Shrine in Harlem. The Shrine is 12 years old. It's owned by Abdel and Sivan. And you go in there, and African Americans and Africans are all together dancing to the Shrine in Nigeria is owned by the Kalabe Birhane family, but then Abdel used the Shrine name and to pay homage to Fela Kuti.
So Africology moved from media. So when I say media, the media actually, you started with radio.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, you started with radio.
Yeah.
And then you gradually moved into TV.
So we started with events and promoting artists on our website, you know. So events, artist promotion, especially the underdogs. The ones that didn't get the right shine, the spotlight, you know. And we still do that. That's what we believe in, to give the people that are
underdogs.
Yeah, because
the rise.
Absolutely. Events, radio, and the radio happened with Afro FM. Hermes had hooked us up with a 3-hour show on Saturdays, and believe it or not, Siraki used to DJ and do all that in the studio,
and then
pray, say Amen, Amen, and make sure and send it. But back in the days with that internet connection or what have you, Hermes was stay up overnight downloading it and then air it every week. Yeah, it lasted for a while, but it wasn't sustainable. We had the hopes of moving here, but you know we still had to do the whole back and forth thing. But that was a good experience.
What's going on with the moving?
The moving? Yeah. You don't see me here?
I mean, every other year.
No, I came. Well, this year, no, I was here twice.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
just kidding.
I'm moving. I'm coming.
Good.
But yeah, that's how I started.
I've noticed. Because I lived in the States. I won't say for how long, but I lived there, and being around a lot of West Africans or other African brothers and sisters, everybody wants to move. Back? Everybody wants to go back. Everybody wants to go back.
To Africa.
To Africa.
Do you know why?
But the people that actually physically move is a whole other ballgame. So out of, let's say we were 20, out of all those 20 people, how many of us moved? If I remember, just 2 of us. 1 to Mali, 1 to Ethiopia.
Do you know why that is, though? America's a trap. Did you know that?
I know it is.
Okay, all right then.
I do.
The whole credit system, the whole...
I know.
They trap.
You get sucked in.
You get sucked in. Yeah. And, you know, think of it as layers and layers. You have to unlearn.
Yeah.
So the process takes a long time. I've been there 22 years. What 2022, right? It'll be 22 years that I've been in America, believe it or not, you know? We have to unlearn all the things that we learned and finish the drink they gave us, be it Kool-Aid or water.
Whatever it is.
And once the cup is empty,
then you
fill it some more.
Wow. Let's come back to Ethiopia and Ethiopian music.
Where's Sirach? He's in the States. That's his department, but yeah, sure.
What is missing in Ethiopian music to go into mainstream?
2 simple things. Mixing and mastering, for sure. Okay. The most basic things that you would need to compete with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You can't have exceptional music and have a bad mix on it or a bad mastering, because people have smartphones and what have you and all these fancy speakers and all that. I mean, you need to hear sound coming from the left and the right. And no, Abagaz, the only brother that's here, you know.
That knows how to mix.
Yeah, but we need more of that. That's for sure.
But yeah, that's the thing.
That's 1.
Yeah.
So mixing, 2, mixing, mastering, we could put it together. Record labels. We need more record labels. And
when you say we need more record labels, do we even have one?
oh yeah,
record label?
we do have one. I'll be
Can you
happy
please
to
tell
tell you
me?
who they are.
Who are they?
Mido Records.
Mido Records.
Yes. I just went to their launch party.
Oh, so they're very new.
Well, so let me put it this way. The label's new,
Okay.
but that's where Kasmasa's music is
It's
coming out of.
Mido.
Mido, like Mido.
I know. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful name.
So it's Maranatha and Choo Choo Promotions. They just had their launch party for the record label at Top View. So they're holding it down. There's a few other labels as well. I think Abagaz and them have their labels, if
They
I'm
have a
not
label?
mistaken. But we need more of that. So
So what does it take to have a label?
you would need experience. You would need depends on what you're doing. Are you doing licensing and are you just recording the artists? Are you distributing for them? You know, so there's a
they
wide
all have-
array. Yeah,
okay.
you know, but an ideal record label would have a budget to record their
To all.
music, to market it, you know, because that's the only way you can compete with the rest of the
Yeah.
world and have digital distribution. A lot of times what happens is Ethiopian musicians will have the best albums. Like there's a reggae musician that has like an amazing album that no one's really heard of. I forgot the brother's name. I'll get to it. But his music is on Spotify. It eventually ended up on Spotify and what have you. But it needs to be collected properly and then dispersed properly. Because
So a record label does that.
yeah, absolutely. You know?
So, but a record label could do that for all musicians? Or do you have to be signed by the record label to be able to use that?
It depends on how you set it up. So we're working on Africology Records.
Yeah.
And the way we're I don't want to sell myself too fast, but I don't care. You know, it is what it is. Somebody want to replicate it, go ahead. I'll support you. You got the money for it. Kalabe will
Why
shake your
not?
hand and say, yeah, yalla, let's go. You know? So the way we're working on it is working with, as a record label, we signed with a distribution company, right? That would disperse everything online. We're talking Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, and what have you.
Okay.
So that's on the side. Then licensing is important. Publishing is important. You got to pay attention to those and make sure that the artists that are writing are being compensated properly or they're getting credit points for it as
Okay.
producer and what have you. So that's lacking right now in Ethiopia. Until you sort all those P's and Q's, we can't have a record label because you're going to sign this artist and then maybe he has a sample that he hasn't cleared. Who's in trouble? The record label.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of learning to do. The industry is not, maybe was born, but it's growing slow.
Yeah.
You know? So we all have to come together. And that's why I said we need as many record labels as possible.
True.
It's not just one.
So do DJs in the US play African music?
Now they absolutely do, and I'm thrilled about it. What you
Pardon?
mean? Even Hot 97 plays African music.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Absolutely.
So we're not slow. Yeah, slowly.
No, now it's fast.
Now it's fast.
The
Zoomed
breakdown
in.
is this. Back in the days was Yosundur, Baba Mal, Angelique Kijo, Muhammad Ahmed, and the rest of
Okay.
them that will come to the Lincoln Center, Summer Stage, and what have you. Now you have Mr. Easy,
Yeah,
Burner
everybody
Boy.
just coming in.
Everyone's coming in.
Everybody.
Yeah, and now African music really is being played everywhere in the world. Burner Boy won a Grammy.
I know. That,
Even though
that in
I'm not
itself
too,
is like,
even
woo!
though I'm not too, that's their system.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
for him to penetrate that is a blessing
get
for all
there.
of us. Yeah, absolutely. And I admire that.
So how's Africa perceived in the African Americans? Africa. And then I would like to bring into Ethiopia currently,
Right.
especially because we are
Going
in
through.
the news quite a lot.
So we spoke about that a little bit earlier when
did.
I mentioned the whole Harlem
Yes.
vibe and what have you.
Yes.
You know, the power of words, the power of sound and all that, people underestimate that, you know? I remember, I don't like to get into politics and what have you, but we got smeared. Let's just put it that way. I was here 3 months ago. I was getting notifications every hour, what have you, like, get out, get out. And I'm like, hey.
What's going on?
Where we at? You know, you know what I mean?
Where are
So,
you?
Yeah. So when I was, I'm happy enough to have been here, to have witnessed what was happening, because if I was there, my heart would have broken.
You would not have.
Yeah, I would have been depressed about what I was seeing from the other side. So the perception varies in different age demographics, you know, areas. Maybe, yeah, possibly race too. Yeah. But like I said, the Harlem Brothers, and this is a place that I resided in, so I can speak for that. You know what I mean? And they were always excited about anything African related. Of course, we would joke around and what have you, and you know, certain jokes would come around, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? About lions and what have you. But that's just, it's banter. It's not real. Not a lot of people really believe that, in my opinion. If they do, we change their perception before we... I
believe we did.
Yeah, we absolutely did, you know?
So before I get into my last question, I want to talk about streetwear.
Yeah.
Because when you say streetwear in Ethiopia, we don't know what streetwear is.
The name, I've been trying to find the word, I can't find it.
Tell us a little bit about streetwear and how streetwear is also connected to musicians. It's a culture.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I know we're nowhere near that in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
I don't think so, from what I know, right?
No, we're almost there, but I'll tell you. Okay. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your merchandise also at the same time. And then, you know, I want to talk about these cards.
Yeah.
So just touch on all the merchandise that you actually, as Africology, are providing. Exactly.
Okay, so during COVID, around 2019, when there was no traveling, there was nothing going on, I took it upon myself, spoke to a couple of partners, and I said, yo, nothing's happening. I'm going to anchor down and start Africology shop. They're like, yeah? Yes. We had inspiration from around when we did the interview on Sugar Radio. We had started, remember, we had a few T-shirts, Addis Ababa Rockers, Sound Waves of Africa, and what have you. But what happened at that time was when you print those T-shirts, you have to have physical stock. That's changed now. So we were able to create, so we have African Royalty Pack is the deck of cards. Okay. That's a collaborative effort between Jamhuri Wear, which is a Kenyan brand. Our brother Kimati used to live in New York, used to work for Fubu and all these streetwear brands that we're talking about. He's now in California. So we collaborated with him to come up with something that represented Black people, Black kings and queens. You know what I mean? And this inspiration came from the Ethiopian Airlines deck of cards that were done in the 60s and 70s, which we had one in Ghana. And one day during our brainstorming session, we're like, why don't we do cards with African faces? And then we teamed up with a very good friend of ours, Maro, who does Desita design. So she created these brilliant designs. But the whole concept is not even, we've started, but we haven't fully expanded, because the whole idea is to have the Ethiopian edition, the Ghanaian edition, to team up with different artists, to commission them to do the work and have them at gift shops and what have you. So I'm glad this is a great opportunity for me to have come over here to speak about them, because not a lot of people know about this. But I'm working on having them printed here, but God willing, inshallah, you know? It's a lot of setbacks. But going back to streetwear, like I told you, 10J Street is where my experience with streetwear came. There's companies called 10 Deep. 10 Deep is the best example I can give you. We used to go to Project and Magic trade shows, and people would have booths and would have T-shirts and jeans and shoes and what have you. And that's how streetwear got big. And you know who got, in my opinion, streetwear got big from the African or African-American culture? The Japanese. Oh, wow. The Japanese, when I was working at VP Records, I transitioned from VP Records to Rhythm Driven Clothing, which is a clothing line that was started by Miss Pat. I used to do marketing and sales for her. So when we used to travel to those shows, we would have samples a season ahead, and they would order. Once they ordered, we would deliver, and that's how, in my opinion, streetwear kind of got famous. As far as Africa is concerned, we didn't really have too much streetwear or clothing lines, or if we did, they were cut and sew, cut and sew pieces or what have you. But for me, streetwear represents, for Africology, it's African, Caribbean, and Latin streetwear brands is what we want to represent, and that's who we've started representing. So Royalty Pack is one of them. Addis Ababa Rockers, which is Caribbean and Ethiopian inspired. So a lot of the reds and greens and yellows and what have you, but sayings and all that. Then Addis State of Mind, which is New State of Mind, which I'm rocking one now, which says Addis Tribe, which is New Tribe, you know?
Yeah.
That's who we represent. So they're colorful, bright colors, graffiti styles, sayings, slogans. We want to change people's perceptions by them reading it. People get happy when they see colorful things, right? So that's our way of education. I don't like the education with a pepper and pen.
No.
You know, there are other brands, but you can go through the website. I don't want to discredit them, but there's Kushneta, there's the Healing of the Nations, there's Africology clothing, there's Africology collaborations, which is important because a certain percentage of proceeds goes to the communities in Ethiopia. I just came from Lalibela. Okay. We have a 43,000 square feet piece of land that's cultivating teif. That's supposed to feed the people around there. They have an aqua feed water situation there as well. So we're going to dig it out for them, get funding, and that could up to 400 people in Lalibela can drink clean water from there. We're doing that with my good brother Danny Doran that runs a company called the Healing of the Nation. So we really, whatever funds we're getting, we make sure it's you got to spread the wealth, man. It's not just about us.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
So going into February, you being a brother that lives in the States, you obviously every month, which I hate, by the way, the fact that you only have the month of February to celebrate Black History Month. And a year is not enough to celebrate Black History Month, technically.
No.
But since they've given us a month, I'm just going to ask you what Africology does, whether it's with the African Americans or with the Ethiopians or with all the Africans that are in the state that you live in. What do you guys do and how do you celebrate it?
More so, I mean, obviously as businessmen, you know, we'll make our website available, probably give discounts and what have you, and you know, that type of situation. We're kind of spread out now. We all used to live in New York. Sirac is now in Richmond. I'm in Maryland. You know, our other partner Abby is here. So we're kind of spread out. And like you said, we don't dwell on that 1 month. We'd rather just have an open, free 365 days, you know?
Yes, sir.
So far, we really don't have anything major planned, but I'm sure knowing Sirac, I get back and he's like, hey, we're doing X, Y, and Z. I'm like, great. What time, you know?
But how about what did you do before?
In the past?
Yeah.
I mean, we've participated in events.
I'm sorry. The reason why I'm asking you that is just, you know, when you come to Ethiopia, when you're thinking of Ethiopians, what do Ethiopians know about African Americans? Do they even know that the African Americans celebrate for a month, Black History Month? So I just wanted to point out a few things that you did when it came to it.
Yeah. During, you know, February months, when I used to manage either the Shrine or Silvana, what have you, would have, you know, Sirac DJing and would actually, I think around February, Mooney played one time with York. Is his name? We do events. Mostly it's event based because that's the best way you can communicate with your customer base and new people willing to learn things. You know, so it's mostly event based. I'll be 100% honest with you. We've never really celebrated African History Month as they created it.
I know.
They give you a month and say, you know, that's for you.
This is what you're supposed to do.
So it's not. Restrictions are no good for Black people.
Thank you. So you celebrate Black History Month 365 days.
Till the day we die.
Perfect.
Even when, you know, we ascend, we're going to be jamming.
Brilliant. With that said, Kalabe, AfreeQa program and Arts TV wants to say thank you for taking the time out to come to our studio and have such a beautiful conversation with us.
Absolutely.
I am going to say goodbye. Before we say goodbye, so we would like to say, if you could also say a few words.
Peace, love, and blessings. Ethiopia is a beautiful country. It's an ancient land. We would love for you to enjoy it here. But please, for the love of God, let the continent really come together. We're here.
Yes.
Where the creatives are here. Let the politicians do what they do. Let us do what we do. We're here to entertain you. There's a lot of good things happening in Ethiopia. Good outweighs bad always. Good over evil. And we say tamasgan all the time. Amen.